the finance bill 2026 is meant to make the majority of Kenya poor. You can't separate these clauses. The effect is a spider web. When fuel goes up, when rents goes up, when digital money goes up, when food goes up, it affects everything else. Because what's the medium of exchange that you do mostly when you're purchasing in the supermarkets, in the markets? It's M-Pesa. And now what have they done? They are putting charges on all things. You know what is going to happen, Brian? Kenyans are ingenious. I love Kenyans. Kenyans are ingenious. Now they want to levy more taxes. Kenyans are going to abandon M-Pesa.
Their one excuse is that they want to bring more people into their tax bracket so that they can contribute into paying more taxes for the government. And which is sort of a counterproductive move, given the fact that I think we've said this so many times before. The fact that we lose 2 billion Kenya shillings per day to corruption and nobody's doing anything about it, I think that's one of the biggest threats that we have in the current government. Because why would I be willing to pay tax? Well, that tax that you're taking, you literally cannot account for 2 billion of that money.
Let me ask a question, Brian, because they want to intervene on our livestock. What are they going to do to the buffaloes and the zebras and the elephants? I need you to tell me this, because they're all carnivorous. What is the population of buffaloes in this country? The wildebeest in Masai Mara, the elephants, the zebras, the antelopes, they are the same as the cows we have in our homes. So what intervention are they doing in the forest? And these people are mad. The formulation of foods they give the animals, the milk is going to be poisoned, the meat is going to be poisoned. That in turn is going to come to the human beings. It is going to poison the kind of foods you are eating. And in an equal proportion, the livestock percentages is going to come down. I am begging our listeners, any intervention from government. Unaona hizi vitu za free. Hizi vitu za free. We have training. There's this non-governmental organization that has immunity. So anything criminal they do in this country, they cannot be held liable.
I remember last year when there was a controversy about when the president announced that he wanted to vaccinate all our cows in the country. And we pushed back. We are saying, we know what exactly you're doing, that this vaccination is not intended to treat the foot and mouth disease that you're talking about, but there are other mysterious sources. And we usually go hard on Bill Gates, and a lot of people think that we are crazy to go hard on him. But his actions actually show us the reasons why we are so hard on him, right? So, for example, Bill Gates has invested in a company that is called Akea Bio. And get what it does. It produces livestock vaccines that aims to trigger the cow's immune system to reduce the methane-producing microbes in their digestive system. So, Bill Gates has a motivation to see that a lot of cows are receiving these vaccines. Why? Because he's an investor. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the top. Welcome to the Organic Perspective. This is a segment where we get to have a conversation on some of the biggest news making headlines in the agricultural world. Today, we have very interesting topics that we want to talk about. But first, I would like to appreciate some of you guys who took time to comment on our last podcast we did. And we had a lot of conversation around GMO, around Museveni, and how he has not eaten rice for the past 50 years. And it was a conversation a lot of you guys engaged in. So I'm going to read some of your comments that you made on YouTube. We have Ray Ashuma, who says, we really need to wake up as Africans. This is what is killing us. In South Africa recently, the health department said teenagers are now suffering from high blood pressure. This is all about food. The rich people in South Africa is white farmers who they themselves don't eat pap. The other things they produce. We are the highest consumers of poison. So that's a listener all the way from South Africa. And then we have David Gashoka, who also says the KK administration is taking the country back to the structural adjustment programs imposed by the Bretton Woods institutions in the 1980s and 90s. If you have to know someone who is really into the rabbit hole, is when they mention the likes of Bretton Woods institutions. So that's a lot of understanding of what's going on. And also there is Mawaludise. I hope I say that one correctly. He's all the way from Accra, Ghana, says it will be an agricultural suicide to Africans if we accept GMOs into the system. I agree. And the last one is Nobutele. He says, Mary is such a brave woman with a lot of love from Zimbabwe. So a lot of feedback. Thank you very much for taking time to listen to that podcast. We've got a great show as well lined up for you because of the amazing topics we'll be talking about. Of course, I will not be doing this by myself. I'm joined now by my co-host of The Organic Perspective, Mary Kathomi, who is the author of The GAR, from the slopes of Mount Kenya. Mary, thank you again for making time for the podcast.
Thank you for having me here. It's always lovely to do this.
Yeah, every single time I introduce myself, I also now say I'm a friend with an author. So that's always an achievement that I think you should be proud of. I read a segment like, I think 90% of the people who start to write the book never make to publish it. The fact that you managed to publish yours is something that you should actually be very, very proud of. And if you haven't had a chance to read the book, we will put it in the links below so that you can be able to get a hold of that book as well. We have very interesting topics that I want us to tackle today. And one of those is I want us to go through the finance bill of 2026 and try to establish what are some of the ways it's going to affect our farmers. And I must say there is not a lot of good news that we have for our farmers because one thing for sure, a lot of products have gone from being zero rated to tax exempt. That's basically a back-end tax they're introducing without really introducing one. So we'll have a talk about that on why some of your poultry feeds, some of your animal feeds are going to be expensive. If you're using solar irrigation, probably going to be expensive. And of course, we haven't talked about the cost of fuel. So that's one. We'll also talk about the grant that the government just received of 5.4 billion to help cut livestock methane emissions. I think this is a topic that was very hot last year. We saw that the government wanted to vaccinate our sort of livestock. They denied that it wasn't the case because they say that they were not vaccinating because of methane emissions. But I think we have evidence here to suggest something else. We'll talk about tomatoes. Tomato prices are soaring. If you're in Nairobi, one tomato now is going up to Kenya shillings 25 bob per tomato. We'll have a look of why that is the case. Of course, inflation plays a critical part there. We'll love to know how much are you buying your tomato wherever you are watching us from. We'll also talk about Kirinyaga. A lot of people are protesting there. Rice farmers are protesting the fact that the government is not buying their rice, and the government has ordered that they want to export a lot of rice from outside. So the farmers are asking, why are you doing that while we have rice in our stores? Business-wise, we'll talk about the Kenya Meat Commission. It says it reported a loss of 589 million Kenya shillings. This is supposed to be a very profitable company or parastate, if you ask me, because they have a huge monopoly, especially in our northeastern part, because they have access to a lot of these livestock. They can actually buy from farmers and then convert it to meat and export. So the fact that they are able to make such a loss, we'll have to see why that is happening. We also talk about how Kenya secured a duty-free access to the Chinese market. That is, population of about 1.2 billion people. Good news for exporters there. But last but not least, if we have time, we'll also talk about cow dung is now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and India is leading that. They're exporting their cow dung literally to Arab countries, from Saudi Arabia to Kuwait to UAE, and even into the United States, because apparently, I think this is something we know already. Cow dung is a really good source of a lot of macro and micronutrients to our farmers. So really, really great topics. I want us to go through the finance bill of 2026. This is something that has been trending in the Kenyan sphere. And I think a lot of people have talked what's in the finance bill when it comes to like the overall containment of the bill. We know that they have new tax for the mitumbas. They have new tax for residential owners, the tenants. They're saying they want to tax it from 7.5. Now they want to take it to 10. So that's about a 2.5% increase. So if you're paying rent, watch out for that. Your rent probably going to go up by 2.5%. We talked about the digital services. So if you have loans in these digital services like Zenka branch, they have introduced a 16% VAT on that. So watch out for that whenever you're going to borrow your money. And also some of the things they were very vocal about going green, but now apparently it looks like they need more money from that. So they will be taxing that at a 16% rate as well. So, I mean, a lot of people have talked about that, but for now, I want us to focus in the agricultural sector and how the finance bill of 2026 affects our farmers. So the story says like this. The proposed finance bill of 26 is poised to reshape Kenya's agricultural economy, delivering relief for large export growers while tightening pressure on small-scale farmers and local producers. Export-oriented sectors like the horticulture sector, tea and coffee stand to benefit, whereby they will be getting a reduction in input VAT from 16% to 8%. Alongside a full VAT exemptions on locally purchased farming inputs. Unfortunately, for local domestic farmers are bracing for rising production costs, whereby agricultural inputs are moving from being zero rated to VAT exempt. This is something we'll talk about. Industry players warn that the result will likely be more expensive poultry feeds, dairy feeds, transport, and even solar-powered irrigation systems. The bill also signals a dramatic expansion of tax surveillance in Kenya's rural economy through enforcement of the electronic tax invoice management systems, what they call the ETIMS. So under the new framework, if you are a milk processor, a tea factory, and other formal buyers, they will require our farmers to generate a digital invoice on behalf of these farmers using their carrier pins, creating a direct trail for our small-scale producers. Of course, they mentioned this, farmers who fail to declare that income can be flagged for tax evasions. Agricultural analysts say that the new compliance regime could push thousands of farmers out of the formal supply chain if they lack the tax knowledge or digital registrations, forcing them to go back into brokers. At the same time, the finance bill introduces a new sugar tax on juice processors, with sugar sweeteners beverages facing significant higher excise duties than natural juices. A move government says that is aimed in improving public health. Well, of course, it's going to increase the amount of revenue they'll be getting from that. So from the story, it seems like the big boys are getting a lot of good from the bill.
When you look at the finance bills from 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, they are the craziest finance bill this country has ever had. You can clearly see there is structural adjustment pushed by the IMF in these bills. Even from an economic point of view, even from an analysis point of view, these finance bills, all of them, the four of them, for the 4 years, they are not building a local economy. They're crushing a local economy. I remember, I don't know which year, they had actually a tax relief for people who are owning choppers, Yes, this 2023, 2024. And now when you mention for the multinationals who are getting a tax relief, and when you look literally in this country, it is the small-scale farmer that feeds this nation. It is not the multinationals that feed this country. Support the structure of this company. Because when you talk about agriculture is so important, Brian. It is from the farm to the transport, to the manufacturing, to the consumer. It's an ecosystem. That is what supports these countries. When you look at agriculture, you're not looking at food. You're look at the road. All the lorries you see on the road, what are they carrying? They're carrying food. Where? To the market. They're being fueled. There's that job creation. There's the drivers. There's the what. When this food comes to the markets, even look at any urban center, not just Nairobi, all the urban centers. What happens? They move from those markets. They're not moving to the consumer. They are moving to value addition centers, processing, drying, exporting. So agriculture is literally what holds this country's economy, literally. So imagine you're giving a tax exemption for the multinational, for example, like Kakuzi, who reported a big leap in terms of profits, and you actually want them to make another bigger profits. So for me, this Finance Bill 2026 is actually meant to push, you know, in Kenya, we have the, I don't call anyone poor, we have the local mwananchi level, we have the middle class, that is the lower middle class, the upper middle class, and we have the rich, the really rich Kenyan. So what this finance bill is doing, and all the 4 progressive finance bills, are pushing these Kenyans who are trying to come up, the lower middle class, the upper middle class, who are endeavoring to get to the rich Kenyan, they're pushing them downwards to the struggling mwananchi. So literally, the finance bill 2026 is meant to make the majority of Kenya poor in so many ways. Because when you're reading, I saw. You can't even separate these things. You can't separate these clauses. The effect is a spider web. When fuel goes up, when rents goes up, when digital money goes up, when food goes up, it affects everything else. You know, because what's the medium of exchange that you do mostly when you're purchasing in the supermarkets, in the markets? It's M-Pesa. So when they take the M-Pesa charge pretty high, like, 160 I saw for a transaction of, say, 1,000 shillings. What have you done? The small profits that person was supposed to make in the market, you've seen even in the matatus, we pay using Pochi. People pay using Pochi la biashara. Pochi la biashara, why do people even like that? Because it is aina charges. The vendors will go and withdraw their money. And now what have they done? They are putting charges on all things. But you know what, one thing, let me tell you what this country, in the next episode, we need to look on tax collection from 2023 up to here. We want to see if actually the government has increased tax collection. You'll be so shocked, even with all these more taxes, they've actually not astronomically increased the tax collection. You know what is going to happen, Brian? Kenyans are ingenious. I love Kenyans. Kenyans are ingenious. Now they want to levy more taxes. Kenyans are going to abandon M-Pesa. Kenyans will abandon money transaction using the phone. They are going to go back to cash transactions. Because at the end of the day, you want to make something small for yourself, take care of your family, and have something small or extra to grow yourself. What does it mean to grow yourself? Have a better home, take your kids to a better school, maybe improve your mode of transport, buy a car. So essentially, this population is being pushed to poverty. And this is an IMF structural adjustment that is being pushed through the Finance Bill 2026. Because from the economics point of view, the economy is not going to get better because of this thing.
Their one excuse is that they want to bring more people into the tax bracket so that they can contribute into paying more taxes for the government. And which is sort of a counterproductive move, given the fact that I think we've said this so many times before. The fact that we lose 2 billion Kenya shillings per day to corruption and nobody's doing anything about it, I think that's one of the biggest threats that we have in the current government. Because why would I be willing to pay tax? Well, that tax that you're taking, you literally cannot account for 2 billion of that money.
Let me tell you, Brian, when we were looking at that about like the milk, you say they want farmers to register on ATMs. You know what farmers are going to do? Farmers will take their milk directly to the market. to the consumer. Farmers are going to bypass the cooperative societies. Farmers are going to bypass the brokers. They are going to take the milk directly to the consumer. And the consumer just needs to make tea and drink the milk for the child, or make tea and drink the tea. Why do you need our e-teams for milk? Point of correction, Brian. They don't want to bring more people to the tax bracket. They want to bring more people for surveillance. It is not because of the taxes. They want to bring in the population for surveillance. Kenyans love paying taxes, trust me, if they feel like the taxes are going to the right direction. For the last 4 years, I'm sure you've seen the auditor's report. It is a depressing document to look every time. Billions and billions of money. I saw it last week. The Consolidated Fund is missing 1.5 trillion last week. So this information is coming to the public eye, and you're still pressing this same population to pay more and more taxes. So you're not even, you're actually insulting people's intelligence,
Absolutely. And I think we mentioned about the VAT reduction for the exporters. So in this case, we mentioned for 100% VAT exporters, they'll be getting 16 to 8%. So what that means, basically, if they used to pay a VAT of, let's say, 10 million, now they'll be paying a VAT of 5 million since they have slashed that percentage. So the whole idea behind this, they say that they'll help these companies to have more cash flow, right? So that they can pay the farmers or the suppliers or that kind of thing. So that's their thinking. Also, I think one thing we mentioned importantly from the story was that they are moving a lot of input VAT. They're moving it from being zero rated to tax exempt. And what this basically means for a local manufacturer, let's say Momia's Sugar, they have different inputs that they usually require for them to process that sugar. So for example, they'll need fuel to fuel their trucks to get that sugar from the farmers into the factory, right? That's an input they're using. They'll need packaging bags for them to package their sugar once it's ready. They'll need something like inputs or fertilizers they want to use to grow their sugars. So normally what happens, let's say that cost of those inputs gets to 10 million. Normally, when it's zero rated, they will go to KRA. They will say, hey, we used this 10 million. Can you refund us? And then KRA could refund them. But since they have moved it to tax exempt, that means that KRA will not be able to refund them. So what that requires is that these companies have to take up this cost of production. So what basically that means is the company going to put that money in their balance sheet, or is it going to push it into the consumer? It's definitely going to push it to the consumer to try and see how they can bridge this gap that they have of extra 10 million, right? Yeah. So you won't be surprised when you see your sugar going from 200 bob per kg to 220. Why? Because they want to recoup that tax exempt. Your poultry, if you are a poultry farmer or if you're a dairy farmer and you're buying your, let's say, your feeds, that cost is probably going to go up, right? Because these manufacturers of these feeds, now they are not zero rated, they are tax exempt. So they have to look for ways to fill that gap of this money since they have been tax exempt. So these are some of the things. I think they were trying to be a little bit clever and saying, hey, we are not taxing you, but we'll push this cost into the manufacturers. Then themselves, it's their problem to see how they can be able to look for this money. If you increase the products for the farmers or the consumers, we don't care as long as we get our money back. I think those are some of the ways they were trying to be a little bit clever, but in the long term, this is going to hurt a lot of farmers who are buying these feeds and consumers who are using these products as well. Something that was interesting also is the sugar tax they are introducing. So let's say you have different juices. You have your natural organic juices that doesn't use artificial sweeteners. So they are introducing this sugar tax whereby it's basically an excise duty. So normally every sugar juice has an excise duty. So let's say per liter, they usually pay 14 bob. But if you're going to produce this juice and you're going to add in sweeteners or artificial flavors, you're required to pay extra. So in this sense, they'll be required to pay 20 bob. So if you're using natural organic sugars, you'll be paying at 14 bob. But if you're using artificial sugars, your cost will be paying at 20 Kenya shillings. So there's that 4% or 4 bob, that 5 shillings that are increasing for someone who's producing like artificial juices into the market, right? Their way of thinking, they're saying, oh, we're doing this to protect the health of the consumers. But if you look at the numbers, actually, through this, they're going to raise up to 4 billion Kenya shillings from this tax that they're introducing. So they might say we want to improve the health of the consumers, but in real sense, what they're trying to do is they're trying to raise more taxes for the government as well. So I think from a consumer's perspective, from an agricultural manufacturer's perspective, I don't think there is anything to smile about. And one of the things I think we talked about that for me bothers me most is this e-teams. They are forcing it on farmers. Yeah. So what they are trying to do, imagine your father or your mother who is a small-scale farmer who produces vegetables, and they usually go to sell it into a hotel or like into a cooperative if they are a dairy farmer. So what e-teams is requiring that these farmers, once they go into to deliver this food, the company has to get their KRA pin. So that's through that KRA pin, they have to use e-teams, and then through that e-teams, then they can see that a farmer has earned income. So let's say they supply a hotel worth, let's say goods worth 100,000, right? So for the small scale farmer, he might not be aware why they are asking for the PIN, right? So when it comes to filling your tax returns, the farmer is not aware. They have never filled such a thing before. So they are going on with their work. Yeah. But at the end of the day, when the filling is complete, then they get a message from KRA saying, hey, you haven't paid your tax because we saw that you supplied this hotel and you are given 100,000. We didn't see you paying tax, right? So I think this increased surveying for small-scale farmers is inconsiderate. It's not
even motivating the farmer for more bigger production.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not motivating.
Yeah. So
they want to capture all farmers into the e-teams.
Yeah, so that they can now be paying more tax rather than right now the way it structures. You go into, let's say, a hotel orders your vegetables, you go in there, you supply, they pay you cash, you're finished.
We'll get a way of surviving. It doesn't even make sense. The government has not done anything to improve production, and they want to reap where they've not sowed. Literally, they want to reap where they've not sowed. A coin, sometimes you sit and ask yourself, what were governments meant for? What was the description of government? Because if you ask me, governments are overreaching. They're completely overreaching their mandate. Governments now sound more so like a prison warden. They are choking life out of human beings. They're not. They were supposed to support life. They were supposed to support thriving of a human being. It's the opposite.
They were meant to provide good enough conditions for us, for the citizens, to go about doing our things, establish businesses, to really have that pursuit for happiness, right? But now I think one of the things, why I like Okiya Mtata is the issue of ODS debt, right? The reason why they are so intent in raising more money is because there's this debt issue that 70% of the money they're raising, it's literally going to paying debt. So they're not touching, it's not being used for anything else. So they have to try and look for ways they can improve how they can get more revenue for themselves so that they can keep the government going. Otherwise, it's going to be bankrupt very soon.
Just building up on what you're saying, this money is given to this country in terms of debt is actually forced on the government. The government, the IMF and the World Bank, forces the government to take these loans, and it's attached to structural adjustment, which is now these taxes we're talking about. These loans are never given on a development project, because every loan that comes to this country needs to go on a development. A government should never borrow for paying a bill. The government should only, according to our constitution, the government should borrow for a project passed in parliament. Not, elite CSs meeting there with the IMF and doing all these things. So you're saying that everything the government collects goes to the IMF. Yeah. And there's this notion Kenyans have that IMF gives us loans so that we can pay. No. This in Bretton Institute, they're not giving us loans so that we can be able to pay these loans. They're giving these loans to choke the life out of us. Actually, the intention is so that you're not able to pay, so that they can tell you, okay, fine, for us to adjust this, you need to do this. It's a slavery. It is not meant to make life better. It's not meant to. That's why, according to Okiya Omtata's odious debt case, a bigger chunk of those loans are odious, and that means they're illegal. Why? They were not given on the premise of the Constitution.
Given to a specific development projects, right? So it's right in the air. Yeah. Somebody took it. They are not even accountable for where the money went.
They're not. Have you seen those loans? Those loans that were given by the IMF, they never landed in the consolidated fund. The loans are supposed to come to the Kenya's consolidated fund. Yeah. They opened foreign accounts in Europe, in the US, and deposited the money there. That money never got to the country. Who's supposed to pay that money? Kenyans.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting you mentioned about Parliament. I think they have so much power, and sometimes they don't know they don't seem like they have power, because every single budget has to pass through them. They are supposed to audit and go and find ask questions. Where did this money go? We allocated this money to this ministry. How was the money used? And they just don't seem to care where this money goes.
Allow me to say this, Brian. When you said how powerful our parliament is, but our parliament has been reduced to is it called a lapdog or lapdog? Look, I'm just giving an example in a minute. Look at the Senegalese parliament. What happened the other day when the president sacked the prime minister? And the prime minister is the one who has 135 members of parliament. Within 24 hours, the speaker of parliament resigned and gave room for Sonko, who became the speaker and is now controlling parliament. And I was telling someone, if it was the Kenyan parliament replicated in Senegal, the speaker would have been given 50 million and a gun on his head, and he would not resign. So our parliament is so powerful, but they've traded the power they have for bribes, for pushing the executive's narrative, the executive's narrative, which is not good for the country. If our parliament just does what the constitution allows them or gives them the mandate to do, let me tell you, Brian, we would not be in this mess. You know these things they call parliament is being whipped to do something. It is the companies that are funding projects funding trips in parliament for parliamentarians to go to coast to sway a particular bill. If our parliament serves the people, it is a very powerful institution.
Very powerful institution indeed. And I was actually thinking, of course, what are the ways that we can help the actual small-scale farmer? Because I was thinking, of course, we have seen the big guys have ways. For example, the CEO of the big companies, they can easily call the CS, and the CS they will say, hey, the CS, we need, can you reduce our VAT from 16 to 8%, right? And the CS will apply. Will say, oh, okay, cool. I'll talk with. I'll put this proposal in the finance bill, and we'll see if it passes, right? But for the small scale farmer, who is supposed to talk for them, right? Ideally, it should be the member of parliament, right? Because the idea is you are representing your constituents, and their ideas and their some of the struggles they're going through. You're supposed to represent them into this platform that we're calling parliament. And I was thinking, if I was a member of parliament, and too bad my member of parliament's probably somewhere singing two-term and really doesn't have a clue what's going in the finance bill, what can I do to help small-scale farmers? And one of the ideas I had is to actually introduce what we're calling a toxic tax. So this tax will be levied on all importers who are bringing in toxic chemicals, the cancer-causing chemicals, the glyphosate, the paraquats, and also synthetic fertilizers, right? These are two things that are destroying soils for our small-scale farmers. Of course, we talked about last time how these toxic chemicals are being used by farmers up in Rivanjoro are all ending up into Lake Nakuru, right? And they are poisoning these lakes. We can no longer eat fish from these lakes, right? So where can we get money to teach farmers to adopt sustainable farming practices, to adopt organic agroecology, regenerative farming, to actually help these rivers to sort of clean them up? Where can we get the funds? This is where the idea of the toxic tax came in, where we levy 15% on all these toxic chemicals that come into the country. And what this does, it helps us to create a fund that we can call the agroecology fund, which we can then decentralize this money, give it into counties, and these counties, through their CECs for agriculture, they can employ more extension farmers that can help small-scale farmers, teach them on this, on how they can use manure. We talked about manure, on how they can make their own pesticides and how they can make their own fertilizers. Through this, then we are empowering these small-scale farmers to actually produce more, to take care of their soils, and to help really produce good, healthy foods for us as constituents, right? The only way we can do that is through parliament, right? So if these members of parliament knew that they have this kind of power, then they can bring such a legislation into parliament. One, to keep these guys accountable. We're bringing really toxic chemicals that are banned in other countries, and really get this money from them to start programs that are really going to be helpful for our small-scale farmers as well. All right. I want us to move into the next topic. And this is a topic on livestock. So it says that Kenya just received a 5.4 billion grant to help cut livestock methane emissions. This is a story from the Daily Nation, which says that Kenya has received 5.4 billion from the Green Climate Fund to reduce methane emissions from its dairy sector across 12 counties. The announcement was meant at a parliamentary breakfast dialogue on methane emissions, where the PS for State Department of Livestock Development told participants that livestock accounts for over 70% of Kenya's total methane emissions. He said the livestock sector contributes 28% of the total emissions, which is over 90% of the total agricultural emission. The PS said in a statement, the main source of this emission is through enteric fermentation, which is 95% of livestock emissions. It goes on to say that the program is expected to focus on livestock genetics and breeding management, feeds and feeding management, animal health, milk loss reduction, and manure management. Kenya signed a global methane pledge at COP28 in Dubai in December 2023, committing to a 30% reduction on methane emissions by 2030. The program launches amid public sensitivity around livestock interventions. A mass vaccination campaign announced by the government last year triggered a public backlash, with criticism linking it to the comments attributed to the philanthropist Bill Gates about livestock methane emissions, and the government's decision to grant diplomatic immunity to the staff of the Guest Foundation in Nairobi office. The controversy drew widespread attention on social media. It generated significant public debate about the relationship between foreign funded climate programs and Kenya's agricultural sector. So it looks like there's a lot of money being poured out to sort of help our livestock.
It's insane, the things that these people are up to. But I'll clearly tell our listeners, and every Kenyan and every African, the climate change narrative is a lie from here to Mombasa. The methane narrative, that the excessive production, and my goodness, we've been on this planet for how long? So when has methane started becoming a problem? And when Brian, maybe we need to be able to digest this methane, watu waelewe. Methane si ni mshuto ya ng'ombe? Ama ni mimi sijajua kitu nasema? Methane is actually cows farting.
Yeah. It's actually the bulging as well. Majority of it, like 80%, when the cow is like when it's
like belching, belching.
Okay. 80% of that comes
is belching and farting.
Yeah,
so that's the way
like
it's releasing.
Is like 20%,
and then when it's a belch, is giving methane.
Yeah.
So they're saying there's an excessive
from that.
This is nonsense. These are lies. I'm telling every single Kenyan, anything that this government comes with in terms of intervention on our animals, in terms of vaccinations, in terms of feeding. So, and when you read and when I went through that document, that money is supposed to intervene on food formulation. To be able to make sure that the food formulated for cows, it was going to mitigate the amount of methane that these animals are going to be producing. Guys, it's a trap. It's a trap. These people, that money is meant to be pushed into the pastoralistic community and the farming community to poison the animals. Once they poison the animals, using the formulation of foods they give the animals, the milk is going to be poisoned, the meat is going to be poisoned. That in turn is going to come to the human beings. It is going to poison the kind of food you're eating. And in an equal proportion, the livestock percentages is going to come down. The population of animals in this country is going to come down. I am begging our listeners, any intervention from government. Unaona hizi vitu za free. Hizi vitu za free. Or we have training. There's this non-governmental organization that has immunity. These non-governmental organizations have immunity. So anything criminal they do in this country, they cannot be held liable. So these are the organizations coming to help you. You know, when they say formulating food, we actually do silages. We have trainings where farmers are shown how to put silages together. Farmers are growing maize corn specifically for formulating foods for animals. You see that? So, and I've seen a lot of these non-governmental organizations, even here in Kajiado, whereby they put farmers in an animal feeding program. So it's literally sort of taken care of by the non-governmental organization, receiving funding from another very famous non-governmental organization. It is all a con. It is all a lie. The intention is to reduce the population of livestock in this country and to poison the milk, to poison the meat, and to poison what else? Even the manure. Everything is going to be poisoned because that manure, that cow dung comes when it goes to the soil. We have poisoned soils. We have poisoned human beings. And let me tell you, Brian, just look. This is something I want you to look into. The project, the same non-governmental organization, has been running a GMO tick project in Canada. Last week, they've released millions and millions of ticks into the Canadian environment. What are the ticks doing? Sticking on the human skin. What does that happen? You get sick. You know what you become? Red meat intolerant. You can't eat red meat. That's what is happening. After your body becomes ukikula nyama, you react. What do? They produce a vaccine for you. You see, so it's a chain of building something. So please, I think this non-governmental organizations needs to leave Kenya alone. Let them leave our cows alone. Let them leave our farmers alone. If anything, just open up an export market for our meat. Our meat is the best. It's grass-fed animals. And I tell farmers, talk to your vet. Always talk to your vet. Do the normal deworming. Tell your vet to take care of your animals. These government interventions, at hizi vitu za free, udungiwe ng'ombe. Sijui unaletewa oh my goodness, this is a trap.
It's definitely a trap. And when you look at the bigger picture in terms of, you mentioned about like what's methane. Yeah. So for example, if this morning you used a gas to cook, that's literally methane that you used right there. If you used use heating in your house, that's methane that is used for heating, right? So it's not a gas, I think, that we should be worried about. And of course, their main pushback is that they say this gas also help trap heat. So it causes what they're calling the greenhouse effect, where if you've been to a greenhouse, it sort of becomes warmer. And this is what they used to call the global warming.
I think people need to stop playing God. We need these non-governmental organizations. I think they're psychopaths. These people are not normal. They need to stop playing God. Nature has a way of balancing itself, Brian. It has a natural way that is not induced by human action to balance. That's how you plant more trees. That's why we are told, it's naturally, everything is a natural thing. When you dispose things into the soil, they seep into the soil. The chemicals are sort of digested. Different compounds are built out of that. You see what I'm talking about? That's why we have things like recycling plants, because everything has a way of breaking down and going back to nature in its own way. People should stop playing God and let nature be nature. And I think we're just sick and tired of these interventions in Kenya. Let people just stop intervening in this country. And in the name of intervening, they want to depopulate this country. They want to poison our food system, because this is poisoning our food system. And then they are going to, in a couple of years, they're going to bring us factory meat. They're going to bring us lab meat. What they've done in America. They monopolize food production. They monopolize livestock. They monopolize everything. And then they brought in now the lab meat. What is happening to the American population? It's a sick population. It's obese. It's cancerous, Alzheimer's, dementia. These problems are man-made, Brian. These are problems that are man-made.
Absolutely. And there are lifestyle diseases that can be avoided. It's quite interesting. I looked at some of the other greenhouse gases that actually cause what they're calling the greenhouse effect. CO2 is the largest contributor. It causes up to 70%, which is actually plant food if you look at it. But when it comes of like causing greenhouse effects, it's the largest. 70% of it is what causes this greenhouse gas effect they're calling, right? And then only contributes about 20% of that. And then there's another one called nitrous oxide, which is actually 300 more toxic than CO2. And guess what produces this nitrogen oxide? It's the synthetic fertilizers.
Let me ask a question, Brian, because they want to intervene on our livestock. What are they going to do to the buffaloes and the zebras and the elephants? I need you to tell me this, because they're all carnivorous. What is the population of buffaloes in this country? The wildebeest in Masai Mara, the elephants, the zebras, the antelopes, they are the same as the cows we have in our homes. So what intervention are they doing in the forest? These people are mad.
I think that's a very good question that they need to answer.
Yeah.
When are they going to go to
let them start? Let them go to the wild beast.
Yeah, the buffaloes, the antelopes.
Yes.
Yeah, because they are also ruminating, right?
I think our to be about fala.
Yeah. So when it comes to like what causes these greenhouse gases, methane is like bottom of the list. When you look at some of the things, like for example, construction industry produces a lot of CO2 and a lot of pollution into the environment. The mining industry, we talk about the transport industry, the private jets that Bill Gates uses and other billionaires uses, they produce a lot of this toxic into the environment. And this is what makes 70% of those greenhouse gases. But you can rarely hear them talk about them. You can rarely hear them talk about synthetic fertilizers, which produce nitrous oxide, which is one of the toxic chemicals that are released into the environment. But for some reason, they're
fixated on our food system. You realize that there's the GMO here, there's the cows here. They actually want to touch the water. And I'm hoping in our next episode, we need to talk about the water. They are fixated on what provides foods to the human race.
It's quite interesting. You talked about like we've been in this planet for a long time and we've been living just fine. When you look at in terms of like the natural sources of greenhouse causes, one of it is actually water vapor. So you see when oceans like are warm and the water is evaporating, 60% of all greenhouse gases is water vapor. Oceans and lakes and rivers, they are full of what they're calling CO2 deposits. When it's warm, they release this CO2 into the atmosphere. 40% of that comes from these sources.
There's nothing they can do about it. This is actually an under carpet way of just trying to mess with our food system. Yeah. You have to see they're very interested in our food system. It's nothing to do with that methane. It's a lie. It's a con. It's a pure con like the climate change con, whereby they want to take our human rights, our God-given rights, using the narrative of climate change, you know? And it is, humanity needs to wake up to these lies. Once people wake up to these lies, then you realize, this is not true. We are being conned to something.
Absolutely. And I remember last year when there was a controversy about when the president announced that he wanted to vaccinate all our cows in the country. And we pushed back. We are saying, like, we know what exactly you're doing, that this vaccination is not intended to treat like the foot and mouth disease that you're talking about, but there's other mysterious sources. And we usually go hard on Bill Gates, and a lot of people think that we are crazy to go hard on him. But his actions actually show us the reasons why we are so hard on him, right? So, for example, Bill Gates has invested in a company that is called Akea Bio. And get what it does. It produces livestock vaccines that aims to trigger the cow's immune system to reduce the methane-producing microbes in their digestive system. So Bill Gates has a motivation to see that a lot of cows are receiving these vaccines. Why? Because he's an investor in this company, right? He's also an investor in Ruminate, an Australian startup that is trying to develop synthetic supplements designed to replicate an active methane-inhibiting compounds. So when they mention there that they're trying to see ways they can help cows reduce through feeds and stuff, there's a company that Bill Gates has invested in called Ruminate that actually produces those supplements that can help cows not to produce those methane gases. So Bill Gates is actively invested in these solutions that are being offered. Thirdly, he's also invested in a company called Zelp, which is a wearable thing. Literally, the company produces a mask that is put onto the cow. So when the cow sort of breathing out those methane, so that those masks can capture the methane and then they can use it to produce other gases as well, but that is not methane.
And you have to look at his intervention. This same intervention is trying to do here. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is trying to do here in Kenya. He's already tried them in Europe. It's been a disaster in Europe. It's failed somewhere else. He's literally a wanted person in the US on his interventions. Yeah, so this is actually it's creating a crime scene everywhere he goes. It's a crime scene. Why else should his organizations have, or organizations being funded by Bill and Melinda Gates, why would they have immunity? It is because of the criminality and illegality of what they are doing. And when you look deeper on all these manufacturings and interventions, all those products they're introducing to animals, they have an mRNA agent in them. Even those vaccines, they have an mRNA agent. And when there's an mRNA agent in a vaccine, it never disintegrates. It never breaks its molecules. The mRNA, DNA goes all the way to the meat, to the food, to the human being, to the soil. It's a disaster.
Yeah, and when we say, like, what's in it for him, this is what we mean. He has an invested interest in such a product. Remember, he's also invested in companies that are producing fake meat, Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, right? So this is a direct competitor to the livestock industry that is producing meat. So when he's talking about introducing such a things to the livestock, well, it's because he has an interest there of trying to change the behaviors of people so that they can be able to start eating the products that they're introducing to the market. Yeah. So it's really, really interesting in terms of some of the things that our government are allowing really foreign NGOs to introduce in the country. And good thing we'll be here. We'll follow up on what happens to that story as well and see what they do to cows. Yeah. I think once a lot more people know about it and then we start making known to it on social media, then they will quickly retract, just like they did on the vaccination drive as well. Yeah, so we'll be following on that story. I want also we move into the next story, and this is the story on tomatoes. So apparently the prices of tomatoes in Nairobi are soaring. And it says that the prices of tomatoes as an everyday ingredient in many households has gone up. in major markets and estate show that retail prices have surged to as much as 25 Kenya shillings per fruit. This is driven, of course, by the input costs and export demand that is diverting supply to neighboring countries. Traders who wholesale the crates have more than doubled in the recent months, squeezing margins and forcing them to ration. One trader says a while ago a crate would go for 7,000 to 9,000, but now it's going to 18,000 to about 20,000. That has forced her into difficult conversation. A customer who used to buy tomatoes as 70 bob now walks in, and I have to tell her the price is 170. Even when I try to lower it to around 150 just to make the small profit, she feels like I'm overcharging her. Industry sources cite the high cost of fertilizers and seeds, growing demand for neighboring countries as farmers favor better pay for export markets. I don't know if you have noticed such a huge difference in the pricing.
I think every time the rains are really heavy, definitely the prices of tomatoes will have to go up. Tomatoes don't do well in cold. Actually, when it is really cold, you have to spray more pesticide because of blight. Definitely, kukinyesha sana, automatically nyanya lazima ipande. So I think apart from not just looking at the tomato, basically, when the cost of production is high, all horticulture foods, they go up. There's also the market aspect in there, which I think is normal, because immediately when it's a bit sunny, even 1-2 weeks of being sunny, tomatoes will just start flooding the market. And they become actually so cheap, that same crate would even go for, say, like 5,000, So I think it's a market dynamic. There's a weather dynamic. There's also the aspect of costs that have, that's what I was telling you, we can't separate these taxes. Once a tax is placed on something, it affects everything else. So you might think it is a tax on the money, the movement of money, but it affects everything else because it just spreads out. So once the taxes are high, that's when they're saying high taxes in a country that do not encourage production of anything, farm inputs, crops, everything, it kills that.
Yeah, and one of the things I've also noticed, I mean, I've tried to grow tomatoes as well in my farm a couple of times and I've failed terribly.
Really?
And and it's something, my grandmother used to do in terms of like, it could just throw
the seed has changed.
Yeah.
The seeds have changed
into
really.
the ground and they used to grow all over.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I'm going to buying like to the agrovet to buy the seed, what is now called like an improved seed. But when I throw it into like the soil, it doesn't quite grow. I even grow it literally on the nursery.
Yeah.
And then give it like 2 months, and then when I transplant it, immediately it just dies.
Yeah,
the seed has changed a lot.
The seed has changed a lot,
and I think it explains why. Because even you look at how the seed is grown, it's mostly grown in greenhouses, right?
Yeah.
So and then they're sprayed a lot of chemicals, and they used a lot of synthetic fertilizers as well.
Yeah.
So once you change that environment from a greenhouse to open, it just doesn't do well. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are not growing tomatoes nowadays. So there's like a small clique that is growing these tomatoes.
Do you remember the small tomatoes used to have kitambo? The small ones?
Yeah.
It used to be like literally like a fruit you throw in your mouth. That
cherry tomatoes. Yeah.
Yes. You can't get that anymore now.
It's very hard to get.
And it used to grow like a wild bush.
Yeah.
With water, with no water, just grow. You look for that seed now, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, it's very hard to come by. So
I think that I really encourage every person who has a passion for farming to put a seed bank. To put a seed bank, even in your shelves, just a small seed bank.
Yeah.
Like when you eat an avocado, when you whatever you bring into the house, don't throw away the seeds.
Yeah.
We need all of us to start putting up seed banks because they've really come for the seed.
Yeah.
This process of improve from what into what? What is this you're improving? The biggest intervention they would have done for the agriculture sector is build dams. If this country had just build enough dams where people can just pump the water to their farms, to me that was a proper support of but they've gone for the seed. There's something very sinister about this whole seed thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important. You mentioned avocados. Actually, I think it's one of the next disasters we're going to have, because what they are doing is they're taking like our indigenous avocados and they just using them as root stocks. So they're using those seeds. They grow very well. Like they have very strong stalks.
Yeah.
And then when it's grown, they just graft it with Hass avocados. So we are slowly losing our indigenous avocados
and
from
they
the
were
market.
so diverse, Brian.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like I would see like a diverse of like 100 different types of avocados.
Yeah.
That's the diversity of avocados. Like you eat an avocado in Kisii, it would be different from the one in Meru, another one in Nyeri. That diversity was beautiful, you know, and we need to really protect that diversity.
And I think I'll be doing that myself. It has forced me to introduce a nursery in my farm as well. So
yes, please.
We used to have I don't know if you used to have that one as well. There's avocado we used to call Blue Band. It was so yellow on the inside, and it had a lot of fats as well.
Yes.
So those are the kind of avocados I'm introducing also in my farm.
Awesome.
So just to keep it going, because I think we've lost that a lot, and there's a lot of Hass avocados around, and it's not. Let's be honest, doesn't taste quite good.
No, it's not like the original. The mom's avocado.
Absolutely. And one thing that I saw that affects the price of these tomatoes is actually inflation, right? So inflation is now in a too high rise, where it used to be 5.6, right now it's at 8.8. Wow. And what that means is that an avocado that a tomato that used to cost, let's say 88 bob, now goes for 115. Onions, the same thing, 140. Due to inflation, now it's gone up to 170. And skuma wiki as well. 1 kg used to go for 65 bob. Now it's at 80 bob. So there's a little bit of inflation there doing justice. Apart from, of course, the weather and the market dynamics as well. And of course, we mentioned the high cost of transport as well. If guys are transporting from, let's say, Kirinyaga or where they're growing tomatoes, they're going to put their markup as well. So those are some of the different factors as well. So it'll be very interesting. Let's know, how much are you buying your tomatoes in where you are, right? So that we can compare the prices as well. So that would be pretty good. All right. I think we can quickly move to our next story. I want us to talk about the issue of rice. So apparently farmers in Kirinyaga are complaining because the government is not buying their rice. The story goes on to say a government decision to authorize the duty-free importation of 5,000 metric tons of white milled rice has drawn skepticism from Kirinyaga leaders, who urge the government undermines local farmers. In a statement, the Kirinyaga governor, Kamau Murago, described the Gazette notice as a direct betrayal of local rice farmers. Instead of protecting and empowering local farmers, the government appears more committed to promoting collaborators who are rice importers, effectively rendering Kirinyaga rice farmers helpless in their own country. The former Kirinyaga County MP, who was actually the CEO of Kenya Seed, I think she was just fired the other day because she wants to be the governor of Kirinyaga now, also expressed concerns on the move. She noted that the government had recently assured that 8,000 Mwea farmers would purchase their unsold stock. However, AFA defended the decision, citing that several production deficit. So according to AFA, the country consumed approximately 1.3 million metric tons of rice annually, yet the local production stands at only 264,000 metric tons. That's just about 20% of the national demand. So I think this is a classic case of we have our products, we've done the work, we've grown our rice. Can you please buy our our rice? But looks like the government has other ideas as well.
I don't know if this government is guided by any policy framework. What does their policy say in agriculture? Or is just They just do stuff. Because I'm imagining, I totally agree. To some level, there would be an import if we are producing lesser than what the country consumes. But why can't they just purchase all the local rice first, entirely? Just make sure there's no farmer that has rice. Then at that point, we know the amount that is supposed to be imported. And then what is the price? What price are we giving to our local farmers? There's another question in there. Are we exposing them to this imported rice that is produced? Most of these countries that produce this rice, they are highly subsidized by their countries.
That's true. And when you're looking, most of this rice comes from Pakistan and India, and their rice sells about 150 to 160 Kenya shillings per kg. But if you're to buy like a premium Moya rice, it costs around 200 bob per kg.
So the Kenyan farmer is likely can actually not compete with the import. So it would have been wise for the government to completely buy the farmers' rice and still buy at a good price to be able to motivate those farmers to continue doing that production, that farming before they import. Because I think I think the Kenyan society is a man-eat-man society. The government that is supposed to protect the people. Those days in the Kibaki days, you hear what saying, "Serikali saidia, serikali saidia." That phrase no longer works in this country. Serikali doesn't saidia. Nowadays is actually auctions you to the highest bidder, because I'm expecting the government. I totally appreciate what the CS for Agriculture is doing. It's actually notably doing some good work in there, but he feels like he's doing that good job stuck in a very hostile environment, of delivering whatever you want to deliver in the agriculture sector. But I feel like the farmer is so exposed, not in the taxes, not in the policy, not in the market. The farmer is a survivor for the fittest, do what you want to do. That's why you find farmers have resorted to underhand methods of production. Why? Because the environment that they are competing is so unfriendly. I have witnessed farmers crying, the wheat farmers in Mau, when the government opened the entire market for wheat importation. And not just opened the importation. Government officials went to millers and instructed millers to pick the imported wheat. And if a miller did not pick the imported wheat, your license was going to be withdrawn. So the farmers, and wheat is a very highly perishable product. Yeah. When it's stuck in the warehouse for a small period of time, inaanza kuoza. So when you find the environment in which the Kenyan farmer thrives in is a very bad environment, and you can see all what we've been talking on this podcast from the last two episodes. Agriculture is very central in this country's economy. Yeah. So like when it comes to policy, when it comes to support, when it comes to everything needs to work around agriculture. And then when agriculture is thriving, it trickles down to the other sectors.
Yeah, because these farmers often are relied by other people. They have like a kid in school, or they have like someone or like a patient or something. So like the money they're getting from this rice sort of trickle down to the economy as well. And it's quite interesting that I saw that the government was actually ordered. Some of the farmers took the government to court, and the government was ordered to buy all the local rice first before they could import the extra rice. But then the government pledged about 2 billion Kenya shillings to buy all that rice. But up until now, the farmers say they have not received any orders for them to get the rice bought. So it's quite interesting, and one of the reasons they're giving this is they're saying that a lot of these farmers do not belong into a cooperative. Surely,
when you go to Mwea, it's so easy. When you go to Mwea, that's the road I use going home. Yeah. What happens when it's the Mwea irrigation scheme? When the farmer harvests their rice, where do they bring their rice? Zinaletwa kwa millers. They are private millers, they are cooperative society millers. Let me say what we lack in this country, Brian, is good leadership. We just lack good. We are complicating so many things to mitigate for bad leadership. What we have is bad leadership. Because you imagine today the government sets aside a budget to go and buy rice from the Kirinyaga rice farmers. Surely. And you just tell the farmers to just make sure they deliver their rice. Is that a rocket science thing to be done? Surely. Let me throw the spanner in the works. Now, where the problems becomes even worse. Because of these problems, whereby the local farmers are not able to sell their rice at a good market price in the local market. You know what big millers in Mwea have opted to do? They actually import rice also. You know that window for importing. The local millers in Mwea also are part of the people that actually import rice. They mix that rice with the local rice. So even me, I've always consumed Mwea rice. Like that's what I cook in the house. So when you're coming, you have to be careful which rice you're buying, because they've imported that cheap rice from Pakistan and India, and then they tell ini bishori, but actually it is not bishori. So you can see their survival tactics and also loopholes in the entire importation thing. And it would be so easy to take all the rice from the farmers, package it as Kenyan bishori, put it in the shelves. Then if they're importing, they say, this is imported. There's no mix-up. Yeah. Whoever wants to consume the Kenyan rice, atapata. Whoever wants to consume the imported rice, atapata. But now they're actually even mixing. You don't even know what you're consuming.
Yeah, I think that's where the middleman comes in, and why a lot of people don't like middlemen, because they sometimes just distort the market dynamics, and they make it very hard for farmers. So that's something to look up to. I would like us to move into our next story. It's about the Kenya Meat Commission. So the Kenya Meat Commission reported a loss of 589 million Kenya shillings. The company net loss more than doubled to nearly 410 million. Analysts say of mounting inefficiencies and shrinking market activity. Inside the balance sheet, the pressure is even more. Cash reserved collapsed by 65% to only 13.9 million Kenya shillings. At the same time, the government reportedly owed the commission more than 552 million Kenya shillings in overdue receivables, locking agency in a cycle of delayed payment and worsening liquidity. Auditors issued a qualified opinion after flagging a dispute over 1.6 billion Kenya shilling government loan, unsupported payables worth 81 million Kenya shillings, and a missing land ownership document tying the asset valued to over 15 billion Kenya shillings. The finding unlikely intensify scrutiny over the future of the commission, which has long been viewed as a strategic pillar for stabilizing the livestock prices and supporting pastoralist communities in northern Kenya. So this is more of a parastatal that has a dominance in the livestock industry and in the meat industry, but for some reason, they're actually making massive losses.
Let me tell you something, Brian. All that you read there, it's a lie. It's a script. Okay, it's like today, trying to explain to Kenyans, Kenya Power is making losses. You are a monopoly. How are you making losses? You make the decisions. You control the market. Actually, Kenya Meat Commission has been earmarked for privatization. So these are the kind of reports they give anytime they want to privatize a government parastatal. This is one of the most profitable parastatal in the country. Okay, Brian, just explain to me, picking cows from farmers, or sometimes, and not even paying those farmers on time, slaughtering the meat, majority of that meat is actually exported. Kidogo ndio your local market. God gracious, I'm just trying to think about it. Ushasikia nyama imeoza mali, ijanunuliwa. This is a lie, and this is what they do every single time they want to privatize a parastatal. Kenya Meat Commission, isn't it the same parastatal that was moved to the DOD? Do you know why they actually did that? It is how lucrative Kenya Meat Commission is. For export, literally we cannot even handle the demand for Kenyan meat in terms of exports. There's a huge export market. And Kenya Meat Commission is what stands out there as the channel for that. Watch in a few months, you will see. Out of this report, in a few months, there's going to be privatization of the Kenya Meat Commission. But in real papers, this is one of the most profitable parastatal. It is actually is literally a national asset, for lack of a better word, because this is a doorway for the entire pastoralistic community. And I don't know, Brian, maybe you could just open my eyes to this. Does the Kenya Meat Commission supply their products majorly to the local market?
To some extent, but they also do for the export market.
If it's in the local market,
but
maybe
majority
just
is in the local
supermarkets.
term. Yeah.
A few supermarkets.
Yeah, but also they have huge supply demand for government parastatals, like you mentioned that.
Or they supply to say
the-
like the DOD.
yeah, to the
They supply to the
police,
police
to the Kenyan
training
police.
camps.
Yeah.
NYS.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So they have all those contracts.
Yeah, they have all those
Yeah,
contracts.
so that's where actually majority of their money comes from.
Yeah.
Up to around 1.2 billion Kenya
So
shillings.
it's just government money doing circles within itself.
Yeah.
These are government institutions.
Yeah.
But we need to look into the percentage of the Kenya Meat Commission that actually goes out is an export.
Yeah,
What goes out for
it's a lot. I don't know, but they do export a large amount to the Gulf states, the Saudi Arabia.
So
the
tell me, just like I'm not. They call it Amutuse, or I don't want to use the other name. Like, I don't understand, like my brain doesn't work. How would such an organization make losses? They say there's something you read there, and you said at lack of due payment. That's flimsy. Selling meat. How is selling meat going to be cut to make a loss? I don't know why they do this. Anyway, a lot of meat consumed in this country is butchery, is local. It's just like we talked about the small scale farmer providing food for the population. Even when it comes to meat consumed in the Kenyan market, ni butchery tu. Watu wananunua nyama kwa butchery tu. The butcher, he gets cows from a slaughter. Yeah, that's how we consume meat. And I thank God that whole sort of ecosystem is actually not plugged into the Kenya Meat Commission. It would be a disaster. It would be, there's a beauty in autonomy sometimes. There's a beauty in decentralizing things. So Kenyans are able to see through this crap of posting losses to sell. There's no way Kenya Power, there's no way such organizations will never make losses. They always throw such losses sometimes, even for Kenya Airways, they'll always do those things.
I remember, I don't know what company made like tremendous amount of profit all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then the next year they made like zero. I don't know, it's good. Kenya
Like,
Power or like
those
Kenya
books,
Airways. I think it was Kenya Airways.
These books don't make sense.
Yeah. On a business, that's an anomaly that no business can be able to do that.
There's a script,
Yeah. So I think, and it's a very strategic parastatal as well, because every time we see like cattle dying during the drought season, KMC should be able to step in and buy this vulnerable
on good prices, not 500 shillings,
Yeah, from farmers. So that's where it was also meant to be there as well. But I think you mentioned a very critical point there, and the story mentioned about the issue of land, right? So right now they have a land dispute that is totaling up to 15 billion Kenya shillings. And let's say if they were in debt, like if they wanted more money, ideally if you have like assets that are worth 15 billion Kenya shillings, you could just walk into a bank and say, hey, I have this asset, can you loan me money to continue with my businesses? But the problem is they don't have the titles to this land, and I think that's where there's a gray area there. When even you mentioned about like privatization, you're like, wait, what's going on in here? Because the meat commission has very strategic lands throughout the country. For example, their headquarters in Earth River in Machakos. They have, which is very close to SGR as well as Mombasa Road. So it's a very strategic place as well. They have another one in Kitengela, in downtown, in Lantes Road, a depot in town. So they have very strategic pieces of land, of course, in Mombasa as well for export, in Shimanzi as well. They have other lands in Nanyuki, Isiolo, Nakuru. So these are all very strategic pieces of land, that if they were really in a bad cash crunch, they could walk into a bank and receive the money.
And government, do you remember those days government used to constantly bail out uchumi supermarkets? But of course it was a conduit of stealing money from government. And every time uchumi was bailed out, but it ended up sinking with a lot of public money. Again, Brian, we go back to the same bad leadership. What we lack in this country is nothing. It's not policy. It is not ideas. It's just bad leadership. We just have bad leadership in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting. One of the threads that you see in this corporation is like there's those political rejects that gets appointed into these boards or into like the CEO position just to run them for political patronage, what we're calling the political rejects. So they get thrown in there. If they lost like a governor seat or they became second, they just thrown in there to run these institutions. But unfortunately, most of the time they run them into the ground. So I think once we have better leadership in those areas, then these companies will do very well as well. So we'll be looking at that. I think let's have a look at our last story and we'll call it a day. And this is on the exports. Kenya's agricultural export to China will begin entering the Chinese market duty-free. CS Cargo say that the removal of tariffs is part of a broader commitment reached by the Kenya and China to deepen the agricultural trade. Among the products expected to benefit include tea, coffee, fresh and frozen avocados, and macadamia nuts, flowers, and fresh horticultural produce. Previously, Kenya export entering China attracted import duties depending on the category. Tea and coffee affected tariffs ranging from 6 to 15%, while nuts such as macadamia faced tariffs from 10 to 15%. The elimination of the tariff is expected to significantly improve the competitiveness of Kenyan agricultural products in the Chinese market, that is of more than 1.4 billion consumers. The Chinese ambassador Guo Haiyan noted that agriculture between the two countries have been steadily growing, highlighting that Kenya is already an important agricultural exporter to China. So she revealed that in 2025, Kenya's export to coffee, tea, and to China reached at 24.6 million US dollars, accounting to about 10.8% of Kenya's agricultural export market to China. So if you are an exporter, actually you're getting pretty good deals from getting a relief on the finance bill of 16 to 8%, and now really getting access to a really big market of 1.4 billion people.
I think on the CSs in this government that are doing something, Mutahi Kagwe is doing something. Is doing something notable, or just something that trickles to the people, because people are benefiting. So I think it's time for the farmers to come together in cooperative groups. Remember in 2023, a lot of farmers actually cut down their macadamia trees because macadamia export market was bad. There was no they were not being exported. So there's every reason now to come together. You know, those small groups, if you're doing macadamia farming, if you're a tea cooperative society, you know, if you have a big chunk of farm, you know, now there's every reason to come together and organize for export.
I mean, the fact that they are going there duty free, that means, of course, the cost goes very low. So that means they be able to be very competitive in the local Chinese market. So let's say you're exporting goods worth, let's say 100 million, so you don't have to pay the 7%. You're saving anywhere about 7 million Kenyan shillings. So that's a good amount, and hopefully they can use that money to reinvest in their companies or like trickle down to their employees. So that's quite interesting, and it's quite interesting that I noticed one of the key things here is that if you try to export finished product, you get very high taxes by the Chinese. You're
taxed more.
When
you import like a final product.
So let's say you were to import like say an avocado oil. You'll get very high taxes over there, and the reason why they do that is to protect their local markets as well.
These are countries that are very serious about creating
Yeah.
jobs in the economy.
Yeah.
So they are very keen on exportation of raw
Yeah, of
materials,
raw materials.
and creating jobs in their
Jobs.
countries.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're
So-
going to, you see, it boils down to leadership. You know?
Yeah. So it's quite strategic in terms of how they do it. And I was looking also to other countries, like for example, if you wanted to export to India, like raw macadamia or like raw avocados, you'll have to pay very high import taxes, anywhere up to around 70 to 100% of that. And the reason why is, of course, India has high numbers of farmers.
So they're protecting their farmers. Well, as we are opening the borders for rice, bring all the rice from Pakistan and India. We don't care. You imagine if that Pakistan rice that was coming here was taxed to protect our local farmer, and maybe a kg of that rice would go for, say, like 300. Who would buy it? We would all buy the Moya rice. But you see what we do here? We just open. And you know what? When you see those importations, ni deals tu zinachezwa. The importer is making a lot of money, That's why there is no tax. There's no, oh my goodness. One day maybe we'll get there.
Yeah, for sure. And I was looking at the top 5 products that we actually import into the country that are raw. And I was looking at the list. I was thinking to myself, if I can avoid this product, I think I will be very healthy in the long term, right? So we have the top 5 products. Of course, we are edible oils, like the Eliantos that you see on the shelves.
Those oils.
Yeah, and the fact that we had a scandal about this one with Boss Escuria when he imported like really substandard oils, and they went into the market. Oil, so that's one. There's second one is wheat. Over 85% of the wheat that is consumed in this country comes from abroad. It's imported. This made me rethink my love for chapos a little bit harder.
You can still eat chapos, but then you buy the whole grain wheat. Yeah, there's actually the whole grain wheat. Like me, when I do ugali, I don't do the white ugali. If I'm not doing brown, there's actually a maize flour that is wholemeal in the supermarket. It's actually ukipika ile ugali, si ya white, but ni ya mahindi. Whole, like the entire grain was imesiagwa. They didn't remove anything. There's actually that, and there's a very nice smell, but it's a bit more expensive. So if you want to do chapati, you can still do chapati, but do the whole meal chapati. But all in all, let me tell you this, Brian. Even for health purposes, you can do away with sugar. Actually, people don't know the history of sugar. Just do some research. Sugar is actually a drug. Just like cocaine, like heroin. It's a classified drug. The history of it, the inception of it, it was a drug. But now it was, of course, the PR and everything, acceptance and the way it's been packaged. If you can do away with sugar, you've done away with so many diseases. And imagine the sugar that we consume. Wachana na hii tunaeka kwa sukari. There's sugar that we consume unknowingly in a cake, in a soda, there's a sugar, actually the industrial sugar. You're not even conscious of that sugar that you're consuming. If you're able to do away with edible oils, if you're able to do away with sugar, if you're able to do away with wheat, those 3 things. Yeah. Apart from the amount of money you save, the kind of health your body will get out of it is astronomers,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And of course, the third one you're talking about is sugar and white and yellow maize, actually.
Yeah.
4th and 5th most imported products in the country.
Yeah.
So, if you're able to keep off those things, your health will be pretty.
You'll be healthy.
Health.
You save a whole medical bill. You'll be so healthy. And if there's anything we need to protect in this day and age, is your health.
It's your health.
Your health.
Yeah, absolutely. And something interesting about the export business, I was reading. There's something called the fertility export. So ideally, what happens? Let's say you are a farmer, you are exporting things to China. So you're exporting avocados, macadamia, or bananas. To grow those things, they needed nutrients, right? The phosphorus, the nitrogen, the potassium. So farmers are actually using those nutrients, and they are depleting their soils. They're taking all those nutrients to a foreign country. So in this case, they are taking it to China. What's happening is that there is a nutrient imbalance. You're literally depleting the fertility of your soil and you're exporting it into China. So the Chinese is taking all the nutrients from that avocado, is taking all the nutrients from the bananas. You as the grower, you are not benefiting from those nutrients. So there's that, what they're calling nutrient export. And as well, what we are doing nowadays is we are importing like fake fertilizers, right? And which are destroying the soils and which are killing the microorganisms in the soil. So what you find over time is our soils are becoming less nutritious. We can't even grow our own food. And so we are focusing on the export market. So there's that imbalance. And if you do actually the math itself, we export, let's say 100 million worth of goods. But when you look at the budget we are using to export like fertilizers and stuff, it's like over 10 billion Kenya shillings. So there's an import both in the nutrient and in the money perspective. So in the long term, when you look at the whole thing, we are actually losing from the fertility point of view and also from the money point of view. So those are some of the dynamics, I guess, that are not accounted for when you're talking about the export and the import markets. We are losing a lot, but it's not getting put in the balance sheet per se.
And look at this imbalance also. You mentioned where if you export a final product to China, there's a heavy tax on that. But what our CS has managed to get is there's no tax when we import raw materials, which is a good thing to the farmer. But look at it like this. 99% of Kenyan imports come from China. Clothes, shoes, machinery, everything. So literally, we are sucking everything from our economy and giving it to China. But China is building its economy and we are its outlet. Because when everything comes from China, it comes as a final product. And they're so synthetic, they're so substandard, but they are coming as final products. We are coming actually to push the product to the consumer. But as when we export our products to their country, we have to export raw materials. So we are giving them job opportunities in their country. This is a big imbalance.
All right, absolutely. Thank you very much. I think that's what we have for today in terms of discussion. I think, they were very interesting and intriguing conversation. Hopefully next time we will be joined by a guest to help us have this conversation. We will see. But if anybody wants to get hold of your book, you can just remind them how they can do that.
And I really want people to read that book. It gives you a picture of a small-scale farmer, rural living, the Meru community, which is what my life is intertwined in. My books are stocked in Nuria Bookshop. They are also now in, and we will share a link on this podcast. They are also stocked in Kibanga Bookshop now. We'll also share a link in there. Okay. Even for our viewers who are not in Kenya, you get an e-copy from Amazon. You could also get a printed copy from Amazon. So we'll be sharing all the 4 links. And if you're a viewer and you're in Nairobi, you could get an autographed copy too.
All right. That was it for today's conversation. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. If there's a topic that you'd like us actually to cover, you can leave it in the comments. We'll be very happy to. If you have not subscribed, remember to give a subscription and will be very much appreciated. Till the next podcast, remember to be organic. Cheers.